Welcome back to another episode of the Tracy Take. We are doing this episode a little bit different today. We're kind of going to maybe recover some of the things that we've done in the past because the software we were using at the time may have gotten the audio a little bit out of sync. So, how are you doing today,
Yeah.
Tyler?
I'm doing well. Looking forward to speaking with you again about some of these quarterback topics as well. And it's always fun to talk about the college football playoff expansion. And so,
Mm-hmm.
as Ryan said on our Spotify, some of you guys might be hearing this again, but we haven't uploaded those videos to YouTube. So this for our YouTube people out there, all 5 million of you guys. This is going to be new to you guys, but yeah, I'm going to talk about the college football playoffs. Always excited about that. I think some necessary changes that need to be made. I was just talking
Mm-hmm.
about this with a gentleman at the golf course the other day, and we were talking about it. And he had some interesting points that I'll talk about. But then talk about the last three of the first round quarterbacks as well. And then also hear some new information as well, and talk about the 49ers, I think, and how they're in a really good spot. But I say, Ryan, let's just get right into it. And let's talk first about how awesome my new mic is. How much better do I
I
sound?
know. You sound great. It's I'm hearing it in my headphones for the first time, and it's a lot better. It's a lot less laptopy, as you said, pre-show. But
Oh
I
yeah,
think it'll just make our production quality just a little bit better.
yeah, oh yeah,
So
oh yeah. I think the net worth of our Tracy Take company just went up like maybe from like
triple.
oh yeah from like $20 to $60.
Yeah.
So, but all right. Anyways, college football playoffs. There's been some serious talk about the expansion going on, and I think it's now actually in one of its final phases in the summer review of the main coaches, I believe. Um,
Hmm.
and I'm all for it. So what the proposal is as of now is a 12-team expansion. The top six ranked conference winners get an automatic bid, and then six
Hmm.
at-large spots. And I am actually all for all of it personally. I think
Yeah.
having 12 teams, I think that's a good amount. I also think that gives the opportunity. I feel like to some really good group of five teams that maybe didn't win their conference or maybe won their conference, but were ranked honestly ranked seventh overall. Like hypothetically, if it's all group of five guys, all power five teams are ranked 1 through 5, then there's a group of five team that's ranked 6, then there still gives some opportunity for some group of five teams as well to potentially get in. But also,
Hmm.
you see some of these SEC teams like Florida. Yeah, they had a couple losses, but they took
I
Alabama.
think that they lost to Alabama twice, and then I want
Well,
to
but
say
they
they
lost to
lost to A and
Alabama. They lost to
uh,
Alabama in a shootout in the SEC
yeah,
championship game. Like they a couple
yeah,
a couple plays go differently in that game, and Florida could win that game. I mean, and so
yeah. No, definitely.
I really think there are some several good SEC teams that on any given day they could potentially beat Alabama or the number one ranked team.
Hmm.
Um, so those are my initial thoughts on it. What are your thoughts?
So I again, just like you, I'm all for it. I thought they probably would have gone to 8 teams before they went to 12, but if you look at it, it only adds on 2 extra weeks of games.
Mm-hmm.
So it's I don't think it's that big of a deal to go to 12, but I think it's cool that they're doing the top 6 division winners. So that's
Mm-hmm.
not Power Five. That's not the Power Five division winners, and then uh, mid-major
Yeah,
division
and then the
winner.
best mid major one. Yeah.
Yeah. And so for me, I really like it. I think it's a good thing to kind of even out the playing field. My
Mm-hmm.
biggest my biggest thing with the college football playoff was the past 4 years. It's been like the same 6 teams that have just kind of rotated in and out: Notre Dame, Ohio State, LSU, Clemson, Alabama, um, and then I
Oklahoma.
guess 5. Yeah,
Uh,
Oklahoma.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
In Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and so I think this levels the playing field for schools like Cincinnati, Coastal Carolina, UCF that would have been in it a few years ago if this had been the case.
Yeah,
And so I think it levels the playing field for teams like that from a recruiting perspective because now all these top recruits don't have to go to Alabama, LSU, Ohio State to be competing at this high of a level. And so I think from that perspective, it is a great thing for college football. And I also
yeah.
can't complain about 2 extra weeks of college football every year.
No,
So,
and I don't think the schools with how much money they're going to make are going to complain about extra
oh
money right
no, not
then.
at
I don't
all.
think the sponsors are going to care too much about the rain coming in, and also talking about so even if like let's say hypothetically we talk about how much money is going to be coming in. So hypothetically, let's say UCF ends up hosting just UCF for example ends up hosting a quarterfinal or even
Mm-hmm.
a round of 16 game if they end up hosting that. You know how much money that's going to be bringing into the schools. You know how much sponsorship deal or not sponsorship deals, but extra recruiting. Kind of clout
Oh yeah.
that they're going to have being brought in, and we're just saying UCF because they're the most recent. We haven't talked about Boise State yet. We haven't even talked
Sim-
about Fresno State. There's a lot of
yeah.
MAC teams that are really good. Is Western Michigan in the MAC? I don't think Western Michigan's actually in the MAC. But I remember they
I thought it
were.
was Central. No, it is Western Michigan. That's the Broncos. That's the one where Corey Davis went.
Yeah, that's one where Corey Davis went. Yeah, and they
Yeah.
made their run. Memphis is another team as well. They're in the AAC, and the same with
Mm-hmm.
Houston. So we're listing off all these teams, and that's why I'm all for the 12 team expansion instead of the 8. And I was speaking with a gentleman the other day, and he had some good points about the 8. And there's a fair point from teams ranked 9 to 12. They've had a couple losses, especially if you're in the SEC. You've already lost to probably Alabama, and we say Alabama. Well, it's because it's always been Alabama, actually. But
Yeah.
you've
And
probably lost to the number one ranked SEC team if you're ranked 9 through 12, and potentially even another loss. Even then, though, so let's say if you lose to Alabama and then you also lose to Clemson, because like I know Georgia's going to start playing Clemson. I think they have a couple home and homes.
mm-hmm.
So if they lose two close games to Alabama and Clemson, they should. I still think that they should be ranked 10th because if you lose by let's
Yeah.
hypothetically 10 points to both those teams, a couple plays go a different way, and Georgia wins those games. You know what I mean? And then they might be number one, and Alabama might be on the outside looking in. And now we're just talking about the SEC. We're not talking even about the Big Ten and have
Mm-hmm.
potentially Michigan, even though I think Michigan's starting to go on a downturn. Penn State's looking to make a bounce back. Indiana as well. Indiana hasn't won a bowl game since the 1991 Copper Bowl. You and I were big Hoosier fans, thanks
Yeah.
to our dad's side of the family. And they have a potential chance if their only losses to Ohio State, let's say, throughout this whole year, go 11-1, and then have a chance to play for the college championship. That I think is what's this about. College football is the only college sport where not every team has a fair shot to win the national championship. Even Coastal Carolina,
Yeah.
a couple years won the College World Series, and they had to win their conference to get in. Then they won the regionals or super regionals, and then they went all the way on to win. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that's why I think that this brings in personally.
Yeah. No. And so that is one thing that I do kind of want to, I guess, go against. I don't think the controversy of somebody getting necessarily like screwed out of the playoff is ever going to go away. Whether it's 8 teams, 12 teams, 100 teams, you're always going to have those fans or people that are going to be like, "Oh, we're better than this team. We should have gotten in."
Well, potentially, if you say at 8, if you go to 12, it gets kind of tough because so like no one really says that with March Madness basketball. Now, of course, it is 68 teams, but
Yeah.
you look at those teams and those teams that are on the bubble and the teams that make it in and make it out. There are strong cases for why a lot of those teams shouldn't make it. You know what I mean? And now I think what this would do is it brings that into play. You can't have a bad loss. Like if let's say if Alabama loses to Tennessee this year, and that's their only loss, that's a bad loss because Tennessee is not going to be very good this year. And then if they also then lose an SEC championship, those you got a bad loss with a good loss because you're losing the SEC winner. So I, I think it does bring in some fairness because if you lose to a really good team, because as I kind of already mentioned with like Georgia, let's say they lose to Clemson in a close one, it still doesn't punish them um, as it used to, where it would
Yeah.
be essentially their season was over, because I think one of the things
Mm.
that this also prevents is, especially last year we saw, and it was a COVID year, so it was kind of tough. But we see these guys that a lot of these top schools, they don't play the bowl game because it's a no nothing game. It doesn't mean anything
Yeah,
to them,
yeah,
so
yeah.
there's no point in them playing that game because they don't want to hurt their NFL draft stock. And frankly, that makes sense. There's millions of dollars on the line for some of these guys, and
Yeah.
but if you're ranked 12th and you're going to Florida, does Kyle Pitts drop out early? So that he can get ready
No.
for the NFL. There's a chance to win the national championship. You're going to play. So I think the NCAA is kind of forcing the players' hands, which I personally think it is what's good for the game, good for the sport.
Hmm.
Instead of just if it's national championship or bust for some of these guys, and this gives more opportunity for players to play uh, year round, and also I think it's make a better fan viewership. Personally,
Yeah, yeah. No, I think it's definitely overall good for the college football playoff. um, but I I have been wanting this to happen for years. I mean,
yeah,
four teams never really seemed like enough, and then again, it was always those same six teams kind of cycling in and out.
yeah,
Um, so I don't know. I do want to touch again on my point about there's always going to be that argument. So uh, Indiana went 6-1 this year, but they didn't represent the Big Ten in the Big Ten championship game because Northwestern went, and they were ranked 14th, 3 spots behind Indiana. So that would be an argument. BYU's only loss was to Coastal Carolina, who was ranked number 12. And then let's see. Well, Miami's quarterback got hurt. Uh, so like there are a few teams here. North Carolina went 8-3 with a loss to Clemson,
hmm
and so and Notre Dame, I think. And so like there are arguments here versus like an Iowa State that was 8-3, but Iowa State played in the Big 12, whereas North Carolina played in the ACC. So like there
yeah,
are arguments here that like you could have where like some teams could be um, filtered in and out. I will say, since the teams are so far down, a lot of those arguments do lose some legitimacy because it's like, well, if you're 8-3 and you're ranked 13, you should have tried to win one more of those games,
yeah.
then you would have been in.
But
So,
yeah, and that's where I think though it gives some leeway to like if you're three losses, like you said, that North Carolina's well, and then is that third loss also including their loss to Texas A&M in the bowl game?
in May,
Yeah. So
um,
so so North Carolina's three losses were to Clemson, Notre Dame, and Texas A&M. Those are not those are three of the top programs in the league, and their Texas A&M game was wire to wire. Like imagine that being
oh no,
another.
it doesn't. So it was Notre Dame, Virginia, and Florida State. Never
Okay, the
mind.
Virginia one's a little bad.
Yeah,
Oh, and Florida
the
State.
Florida State's pretty bad.
Yeah, that one's pretty bad too. So, but
Okay,
that's
so
where. But then still then because they talk about strength of schedule and then they also talk about like their top wins or then they compare a lot like which loss was better, so to say, if that makes sense. And that's what they
mhm,
do in basketball. But in basketball, they're playing 30 games, and so your strength of schedule actually, I think, is more fair to judge
yeah,
than in football because an SEC strength of schedule might look weak, but the SEC ran the table against all these other teams
mhm,
who were the best in these other teams' conference. Like Mississippi State went what 3-8 or 4-7 or something like that, and beat Tulsa. Ole Miss had a losing record, went 5-6 and beat Indiana, and you know what I mean. So,
yeah.
ranking the strength of schedules in football is a little bit different because there's so much conference play that goes into it, uh, and I think expanding it will honestly make that conversation a little bit easier because if you're ranked 12th or
It will,
13th,
yeah, no,
if you're
definitely.
ranked 12th or 13th, the I mean, I'm gonna like if there's an SEC team that's ranked 13th and a Pac-12 team that's ranked 12th, the strength of schedules you have to look into it a little bit on who's getting in, because that SEC team that's ranked 13th and maybe they only have 2 losses, one to Alabama and then one to, let's just say, Florida or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Those programs are elite. And if you're looking at the Pac-12, you have Oregon, you have USC, which I think is going to be pretty good, but
Yeah.
overall it's hit or miss. It is a different type of league. That strength of schedule is going to look a lot weaker than an SEC strength of schedule.
Yeah, no, definitely,
So,
definitely. I 100% agree, and I think it will definitely lighten that argument a lot. Because I mean, you're not going to have a Texas A&M that people are going to argue with should have gotten in over Notre Dame, or even Oklahoma, for that matter. So,
yeah.
but yeah, and so I think that's going to kind of wrap it up for the college football playoff. Unless you have anything else to add.